Do you sometimes catch yourself making a mistake when you're speaking English and you realize that you're making a mistake, but you're wondering why couldn't you have caught it before making that mistake? Many English learners like yourself think that there's something wrong with them, but I have some good news. This is completely normal. In this video, I'm going to explain why this happens and what you can do about it. The first really important thing to understand is that your brain has two ways of doing things, known as System 1 and System 2. System 1 is doing things that are automatic. Like, you don't really need to think something through when you're using System 1, because you've done them so many times that you don't really have to worry about them. For example, when you unlock the door of the apartment you've been living in for several years. Like, you don't really have to think about how you put the key in, you just do it. Or as you walk, you don't really need to think about how you put your foot down. You just left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. You just do it. Or when you say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" in your first language, if you do small talk, I know people hate it in many countries. Anyways, it's not something you need to think long and hard about. System 2, on the other hand, involves more thinking than that. Like, for example, if you're organizing a new home where you've just moved, you really have to think it through. You need to decide, okay, where am I going to put all my t-shirts? Or these, these socks, where do they go? You're going to be using your System 2. You're going to be really thinking about it. Like, I move around a lot, for example, and it means that for a big chunk of my life, I'm using System 2 to organize my place. Like, where am I going to place all the cords and so on? But usually, if you've been living in a place for a long time, you kind of know where things go, right? Like, this is the drawer for my underwear. This is, the place where I put the rice. So when you do anything that is not automatic, you'll be using your System 2. Doing your taxes, System 2. Trying to book a vacation and doing some research into the flights, System 2. Having an English lesson, System 2. Using System 2 requires a lot of effort from our bodies, so we only really use it when we have to. Bear with me. I'm going to explain how this relates to your English and how it can help you. Multitasking is really a scam. It's only really possible when you're doing something with your System 1, and the other thing you either do with System 1 as well or with System 2. So, for example, let's say you're washing the dishes and you do it the same way every day. You don't have to think much about it. You just do it. It's a mechanical, automatic task. So, in this case, you can be listening to a book, for example. But let's say you're renting an Airbnb, you're on a trip, and you're washing the dishes, and you have to figure out where they go. You have to really think about it. You can't be listening to a book at the same time. I mean, you can be, but you're not going to be actually listening, because your brain just can't handle doing 2 or more System 2 tasks at the same time. If you do force your brain to do something like that, then what ends up happening is that your brain just switches between those tasks. So it's not really doing 2 System 2 tasks at the same time. It does one, then the other, then the first one again, then the other, and so on, depending on what it is. The reason this matters to you is that when you're trying to speak, you're using grammar, vocab. In the background, you're also trying to think about what the person is asking, for example, the ideas that you want to express, and that's a lot of stuff happening at the same time. If you don't perfectly remember all the things that you need for a conversation, like the grammar, vocab, and so on, you will need to use your System 2 not only to pay attention to what the person is saying or asking, how they're saying it, so like what accent, and imagine if this person is Irish, for example. You have to also put together all the grammar and vocab and so on. So you need to use your System 2 for many tasks at the same time. And what have we learned about this? Your brain can't multitask, so this can't happen fast. So to make it easier for yourself to be able to speak naturally and not make mistakes, you need those things to be a System 1 task. So how the hell do you do that? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Look, anytime you learn something new, you create neural connections. So the neurons in your brain connect, and there is a signal that travels between them, and it's basically, you can think of it like building a Lego. and you connect the pieces. The more you use this information in different ways, the stronger the connections become. Over time, you make those connections really strong, and you give your brain time to put all that memory where it should be. In other words, you give your brain the time to consolidate all the memories, and this new information is going to become so embedded in your memory that you'll be able to automatically use it when you need it, just like you do everything else in your own language. Here I do want to very quickly point out for a millionth time that it is absolutely not physically possible to learn a language in a month or 2 or 3 unless you already speak it like 99%. That's just not how memory works. So when I say that you need to do all these things, learn and practice and just give your brain time, when I say time, I don't mean like a week or 2. We're not talking weeks, we're talking months or years. The more you improve your grammar, for example, the less you need to pay attention to it during a conversation. It's gonna come to mind automatically. Same goes for vocab, same goes for pronunciation. The more you improve your listening skills, the less you need to pay attention to that. So your system too can sort of take a break when you're talking. And the more breaks your system too can take during the conversation, the faster, the more natural, the more fluent your speech in English is going to become, just like it is in your own language. But if, for example, your vocab is not quite there, your grammar isn't really as good as you'd want it to be, you're also not sure about your pronunciation, you're not really going to feel confident. And you'll feel like you kind of know the stuff, but not well enough to feel confident and fluent and to not make mistakes. So what's the takeaway? To become confident when you speak and to stop making mistakes that you kind of know about, you need to have built a very strong memory of everything you need for speaking. So you need to bring your grammar, your vocab, and your pronunciation, and all the other things you need to a point where you don't need to pause and try to remember those things. You need to make it easy for your system to work by making those tasks a system 1 task. You do that by learning all these things and practicing them over time, and by giving your brain time to consolidate all those memories. I don't really have a magic pill for you, as you've probably noticed. It's a really hard job learning a language. I'm learning Spanish myself. God, some days I'm so frustrated with it. But the formula is quite simple. It's learning plus practice plus time. There's obviously some other things that are extremely useful, like constant feedback and consistency. But, I'm not going to talk about those right now because it's going to be harder for me to make my point about how simple it is. Anyways, make sure to sign up for my email list if you want to make your English journey easier and more enjoyable.